Ask the everyone to take their seat, please. Okay, we ask the clerk to call the roll.
Senator Boswell, Senator Carpenter, Senator Elkins, Senator Girdler, Senator Herron, Senator Maiden, Senator Mills, Senator Webb, Senator West, Senator Wheeler, Senator Williams, Representative Baker, Representative Bauman, Representative Blanton, Representative Bowling, Representative Bridges, Representative Chester Burton, Representative Dossett,
Present.
Representative Flannery, Representative Fugate,
Here.
Representative Hancock,
Here.
Representative Johnson,
Here.
Representative McCool,
Here.
Representative Miles, Representative Moore,
Here.
Representative Smith, Representative Watkins, Representative Wesley, Representative Whitaker, Representative White, Representative Williams,
Here.
Co-Chair Smith, and Co-Chair Gooch.
Here. Okay, we do have a quorum. We ask everyone to silence your cell phone, please. Yes, sir. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting? Motion seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by like sign. Okay, that does carry. So we're going to start right into the agenda today. Appreciate everybody being here. First, we'll have a presentation about helping power Kentucky's growth. John Bevan, Senior Director in Business of Economic Development for LG&E and KU, and Caroline Clark. So, y'all there, introduce yourself for the record, please, and proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. Caroline Clark, Director of External Affairs for LG and KU. Pleased to introduce John Bevington. Many of you know John from the many years he spent leading Kentucky's economic development efforts with the Cabinet for Economic Development. He joined LG and KU in 2018, and he now leads those same efforts for us, and not only for LG and KU, but for all of PPL. John's going to tell you a little bit about what LG and KU are doing to ensure that Kentucky maintains its competitive advantage when it comes to energy. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. Good afternoon. Appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thanks for all you all do to help lead us in the energy space. It's been an interesting couple of years, a lot of exciting things that are going on, and I'll take you through a little bit of that. And again, as Caroline said, talk a little bit about how we can continue to keep energy as part of our competitive advantage with regard to economic development in the state. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview on LG&E and KU, our service territory, and the makeup of our generation fleet. We'll talk about our economic development pipeline. So as Caroline said, I've been doing economic development in Kentucky for about 16 years now. It's been an honor and a pleasure to do so, and I'm learning a lot over the last 7 or so years about how energy plays into that and what we can do to support it. So we'll talk about our pipeline. Obviously, the order of the day seems to be data centers and what data centers require and the benefits of data centers and all of that. So we'll touch on that and how they select sites, which is a little bit different than the typical economic development process. And then we'll talk about what LG&E and KU is doing to address the opportunity at hand with regard to economic development and how energy plays into that. So some of you may know this already. LG&E and KU is, we do economic development across the state. We're in 93 counties with our gas and electric service. And then we've got 5 counties in Southwest Virginia. A lot of people don't know that. 1.3 customers we serve, and we're proud to serve. A lot of them are major manufacturing and industrial. About a third is residential. About a third is manufacturing, commercial, and industrial. 7.5 gigawatts of owned and regulated power. You can see on the slide there, everywhere you see the words on the screen and where they point to, those are our generating stations. So we've got quite a bit in and around the Louisville area, some in central Kentucky as well. And that goes from coal, natural gas, solar. We've got a pretty diversified fleet throughout our footprint. Proud to be on the team here that has been recognized over the last 12 of the last 14 years. We've been recognized by Site Selection Magazine as a top utility for economic development. In 2024, to support the application for that award, we supported 76 projects that represented $2.8 billion from the private sector throughout the state of Kentucky. That also created over 3,000 new jobs. While we cover about a third of the state, about 45% of all the announcements in economic development last year throughout the state were in our service territories. We're pretty proud of that. We like to think we punch above our weight class. 39% of the investments statewide happen in our service territory, and about 34% of the new jobs. So I think this is going to be probably the part of the most interesting part of the presentation here. This is a similar slide that I presented to the AI task force a few months ago, and it talks about all of the projects that my team and I happen to be working across the state. This pipeline represents 9.7 gigawatts of potential power requests from customers, both expanding and existing customers and new customers. To give that some perspective, as I said on a previous slide, currently our generating capacity for all sources is 7.5 gigawatts. So what took us about 100 years to get to 7.5 gigawatts, now we've got 9.7 gigawatts that are interested in either expanding or locating in Kentucky. So it's a really exciting time. It's a challenging time, and again, we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing to try to support that. Of that entire pipeline, data centers represent 22 of the capacity requests in that, and they are by and large the largest portion of that 9.7 gigawatts. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, 8.7 gigawatts of that 9.7 is data center interest, and 1 gigawatt is manufacturing, commercial, and other. So just walking through the pie chart there, if you look at the colors, the early stage prospects that are represented here are represented by the green and sort of the grayish color. Those are what we would say are new calls into the system. They're sort of early stage, low probability at this point in time. Maybe we're answering some initial questions that they have about doing business in Kentucky. But nonetheless, those early stage projects, if you add those two things together, that's 4.5 gigawatts of potential requests from early stage inquiries. So again, almost as much as we've got in total generation. Those are people that are causing our phones to ring today. The biggest portion of it is in red, and that's what we would deem as a team to have a 50-50 chance of locating in our service territory. So those are prospects that happen to be more engaged with us. We're doing more detailed studies of our system. We're talking about workforce potentially. We may be engaged with the state and negotiating incentives and things of that nature. Basically, they're checking all the boxes to try to make a decision, and that's what's represented in red. That's another 4.5 gigawatts of potential opportunity, right? 35 projects and 4.5 gigawatts. The brown and the yellow are either imminent or projects that are going to happen, right? So again, if you add those up together, you've got 700 megawatts of opportunity that's either 80% or better, or maybe they've already said that they're going to come here. Again, to give you some level of perspective, a new natural gas combined cycle plant is about 640 megawatts. So just this year, imminent or announced projects as deemed by my team is basically one new power plant. So it is an extremely busy time for us. It's an opportunity or a great time to capitalize on the opportunity at hand, but there's a lot out there right now. Breaking the pipeline down a little bit further, we are, as I said, we've got 22 data center projects that are in the pipeline that we're working on for 8.7 gigawatts, but in total, we're working on 196 projects. And those go from new and existing customer expansions. So some of you may have seen that Toyota is doing some expansion there in Georgetown. Ford has announced that they're going to build a new electric vehicle platform at LAP in Louisville. Apple and Corning have announced a partnership where all of Apple's Gorilla Glass, or whatever you want to call it, is going to be produced there in Harrodsburg. University of Kentucky is expanding their cancer center, and all of those kinds of things. That's 130 of the projects in our pipeline, and they represent about 337 megawatts, so about half of a natural gas combined cycle plant. For new economic development, non-data center, again, as much interest in the pipeline as equals a natural gas combined cycle plant. There's 44 projects there. Those are everything from automotive suppliers, distilleries, packaging, and a whole lot more. And then the final column on the right there is the data center piece, which I touched on already, 22 projects for about 8.5 or a little over 8.5 gigawatts. One project in particular you may have seen in Louisville, the Campground Road Poe Powerhouse Data Center has already been announced. They've announced their intentions to build that data center there. That's 525 megawatts. And, based on an economic impact analysis that they performed a few months ago, that's going to be about an $11 billion project. So that $11 billion is going to be taxed at the local level by the school systems, by the state. That provides a lot of necessary revenue to help you all do your jobs. And again, that's some of what you don't necessarily read in the papers today. And again, we can touch on that as we go through it. But that one project alone is about an $11 billion project. So the next thing that I'd like to do is talk a little bit about, some of you may have questions about, there's a lot of information in the news today about a data center wanting to operate or locate in a particular community. Maybe there are planning and zoning questions about, where these things are going to go. And I think it's important for me to educate you all on the site selection process for typical economic development projects, and then also for what data centers undertake in their process. So typically with any kind of manufacturing operation, all right, let's imagine that we have a German manufacturer of widgets and they want to locate in Kentucky. Typically what they'll do is they'll hire a site selection consultant, or they themselves will start looking at a multi-state region for a building or a site if they're going to build something greenfield. And that's really the tip of the spear. Where can I go operate where they have an existing building or an existing site that I can locate on that might have highway access? If I'm shipping goods in and out via rivers, I need to have river access. Maybe I'm bringing raw materials and supply in via the rail system. I need to be close to a rail line. So again, they're evaluating all of these logistical components in a multi-state region to start the process, right? They're asking if that community or that state has the kind of workforce that's necessary for me to be successful, and do they have utility access? They take all of that information and they put it into a short list, and that is a process of elimination. They are trying to put as much in that funnel to evaluate at the forefront, and then they're trying to eliminate communities throughout the process. As that funnel gets a little narrower, they create a short list. They might go visit the community. This is all typical. Some of you may have been involved in site visits with economic development prospects, but they'll go visit a community, get a feel for them, get a feel for the state in which they might be operating, negotiate incentives, make a final decision, and announce their intentions. That's the typical economic development process. With mega data centers and hyperscale data centers that you might see from the big four that you all can read about, Microsoft, AWS, Google, and so forth, Meta, the first and foremost priority for them is not about a site and it's not about a building, it's about access to the transmission system. So in a typical industrial park, a site or a building can be served by the distribution system. You can usually get 3 to 5, 6, 7 megawatts off of that distribution system, and an industrial park is just fine. For a data center of a hyperscale nature, they are typically 100 megawatts or above, and they have to have access to that transmission system. That transmission system is the high-speed interstate that carries the most amount of electrons and what a data center needs to hook into. So they're usually coming to the utility companies first. In the typical process, they might go to the economic development cabinet first. They might come to a local community first, ask about that industrial park. Typically now, data centers are coming to the utility first because they're trying to figure out if that transmission system that they're looking at has capacity to serve their overall needs. What we then do as a utility is try to be very responsive to their needs. We'll do internal analyses on the transmission system and give them some order of magnitude about, how long it will take for us to serve their needs. If they want to continue to go forward with that, we'll determine what kind of needed infrastructure is there. We'll give them cost estimates, and they will have to pay for specific infrastructure to serve their needs. If it's network upgrades that we have to make, that becomes something that all customers pay for because it's beneficial to the system. But if there's something that particular customer needs themselves, they will have to pay for that, and we'll give them estimates of that. Then we get into formal, if they're still interested, and again, think about this as the funnel, but instead of eliminating, they're trying to get something that's acceptable to them. Once we get into that nature, then we will do formal transmission studies, and those take 6 to 9 months. right? So we have to turn that over to an independent transmission operator. They study the system themselves. And then what we do is we'll do some things in parallel. We'll start helping them develop the site. We'll start building infrastructure, ordering long lead equipment items, and they will back that up with financial security such that if their project doesn't go forward, our customers are not harmed by their decision to not operate here. So we'll do all that in parallel. They'll sign agreements for financial protection, as I said. We'll procure those long lead investments, and then we'll announce the project. Consider that these are billion-dollar projects. These things don't happen quickly. You know, the process of evaluation for a hyperscaler is usually a year or more, I would say. A lot of the decisions and interests that we have are a result of the legislature passing the sales tax exemption bill, which really opened up the floodgates and said to the data center world, Kentucky is interested in your business. We want you to evaluate this place to do business. And so again, the onus falls on us to try to help make that process easy and simple for them to understand. The challenge and opportunity that we have, however, as I said earlier, we've got one announced project that's 525 megawatts. That's almost the size of a new natural gas combined cycle plant. It takes 5 years to build new generation. It takes a data center 2 years, roughly, to build a building, right? We saw in Glendale, Blue Oval built 2 4 million square foot buildings in about 18 months to 2 years, right? They can build much faster than we can build new generation. So that's the crux of the scenario. And again, I'll talk a little bit in a few slides about what we're doing to try to get ahead of that to make sure that we can both encourage data centers to locate here and other large manufacturing, I should say. Blue Oval, SK at Glendale, projects a need for about 260 megawatts at that site. So it's not just data centers. They sort of have the lion's share of the power requirements that are in the economic development pipeline right now, but there's a lot of other things going on. And so if Toyota wants to locate here, we have to make sure that we have the generation transmission capacity to serve their needs as well as we go forward. We do not want to have a scenario where the utility companies are saying we don't have enough capacity, you're going to have to wait for 5 years in order to get it, right? So we're trying to get ahead of some of that. Yes, sir.
I have a couple of questions, so
Please.
maybe we could go ahead and ask those now and then.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Senator Boswell.
Well, I think you might have been you might have been getting ready to answer my question, so I don't want to get too far ahead here. So is it possible for some of these data centers to have their own power generation source? Because we know across the state right now, data centers as standalone operations are not very popular because people are concerned it's going to take their electricity. So as we go into the future, maybe you're getting ready to answer that, where somebody's going to be creating some power sources to power these data centers and things like that.
I absolutely will give you the perspective of what LG&E and KU is doing to accommodate their needs. I think one really important thing for everybody to understand is you can manufacture more power. It's just a timing thing. All right. So again, we have submitted some things to the Public Service Commission and actually just got an order on that last week, and I'll touch on that in just a few slides if you don't mind. Thank you. So again, that's the opportunity and the challenge for us. Before I get into that last piece, I want to talk a little bit about, as I said earlier, confidentiality in economic development is nothing new. Every time we work a project, it has confidentiality aspects to it, right? I was thinking the other day, when I was at the cabinet, we helped an iron foundry locate in Franklin, Kentucky, in an industrial park there. The community didn't know that there was an iron foundry that was considering that location. We worked on the project for probably a year and a half and never came out of the news. That's because iron foundries weren't in the news at the time, right? People weren't talking about iron foundries being built all over the country, and people could then go and Google what is the challenge of an iron foundry. Why do I not want an iron foundry in my neighborhood, right? Data centers are such a hot topic that people are reading about it in the news, and then they go and Google what's the problem with a data center, right? And they're forming their own opinions about these things and so forth. So confidentiality is nothing new for all of us, but again, it's getting a lot of attention for that reason. So what you're not hearing a lot about is the benefit of data centers, and I talked about it a little bit ago. $11 billion investment has a tax base associated with it, right? I think the Poe Powerhouse team and their economic impact analysis said that for an $11 billion project over 10 years, that can create about $500 million in new tax revenue to the local community, the school system, and the state. And that's just one project. So if you think about if we got 3 or 4 of these, we don't need to be, Loudoun County, Virginia, but we ought to get our fair share. And I think that's part of what the sales tax exemption allowed us to do, is to fish the entire pond. And if we get 3 or 4 of these things, it could be a game changer for our state's economy. So here you'll see that every data center job accounts for 6 jobs elsewhere in the economy. That equates to the same as a manufacturing project. Total contribution to the U.S. GDP between 2017 and 2021, and this is the most recent study by the Data Center Coalition that represents those hyperscalers and many other operators. U.S. GDP grew 37% between 17 and 21, and that's before the boom that we're in now. Labor income earned directly from data centers between that same time frame grew by 74%, and again, that's before the high marks that we're seeing now, to $75 billion in the U.S. And finally, Ohio, in particular in Columbus, has a plethora of data centers there. The data center industry directly and indirectly generated $2.6 billion in state and local tax revenues in that 4-year time frame. I think that's all a pretty good thing. And again, it's something that is hard for the local communities to really grab a hold of, but I think that's something that definitely needs to be out there as part of the story. So, Senator Boswell, back to your question. This is what we're doing at LG&E and KU to prepare for economic growth in the future. So currently today, we are in the process of building a 120 megawatt solar facility in Mercer County. That is underway. We also have a contract with a developer who's building a 120 megawatt solar facility in Marion County that we will purchase from them when it's done. And finally, a 645 megawatt natural gas combined cycle plant is under construction in Louisville as we speak. That will add 645 megawatts to our generating capacity. Last week on October 28th, we've been through almost a year-long process at the Public Service Commission where we asked for additional generation resources to be approved to give us the authority to build those things. On October 28th, we received an order in that case giving us the authority to construct Brown 12, a 645 megawatt natural gas unit in Mercer County, and another 645 megawatt unit in Louisville at Mill Creek. We also received authority to build an SCR environmental control on our Gent unit in Northern Kentucky. That's a coal unit there. And we also plan to extend the life of Mill Creek 2, which is a coal unit in Louisville, and reinvest in that system that was planned to be retired in 2027, and we will run it until we can build Mill Creek 6 there in 2031 is when that will come online. So I know I overloaded you with a bunch of information. Happy to take any questions, and thanks for your time and attention.
Okay, we have several questions. Representative Moore?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Bevington, thank you for this brief today. One question I've gotten, and it's a concern, it has to do with data centers from a lot of constituents and people who just reached out who are constituents, just full transparency. It's you talked about it, confidentiality, the NDAs that are often tied to these potential data center products or projects. You had 196 projects in the pipeline. Of those, 22 were data centers. Those data centers account for 89.7% of required electrons. That's a huge, huge, huge majority. The concern is if there's 22 potential requested projects, how do we know that's not actually 3 that are kind of poking and prodding in different parts of the states as part of their site selection, and we don't actually need to have generation and transmission for that volume? It might actually be significantly less.
Yeah, thank you for your question. It's a really good one. I should have said we don't have an expectation that all of that 9.7 gigawatts happens in our service territory for certain. As I talked about, the CPCN requirement that we asked for from the commission projected that we will have 1,750 megawatts of new growth in our system between now and 2032. So of the 9.7, we're planning on 1,750. It is not uncommon for an economic development prospect or project to look at multiple different communities throughout the state. It is very common, as a matter of fact. When I talked about the typical process for a manufacturer, they might look at a 4 or 5 state region, and within that 4 or 5 state region, they might look at 5 or 6 different communities. What we do in our pipeline is put probabilities on, and that was that pie chart. We put probabilities on which ones we think have the best chance of success of happening in our service territory, so that we don't overbuild and so that we are planning effectively to that. So as those projects continue to move forward, if for some reason they stall, something's not going well, they'll fall out of the pipeline just the same. And if they continue to progress, will give them a higher probability chance for success. So we really are looking at it from the standpoint of what of that pipeline do we think is going to go forward, and we base that on the activity level that's happening throughout our service territory.
I've got about 4 people with questions. Senator Bridges is going to have to leave early. Oh, okay. Well, okay, I'm sorry. All right, Senator Williams.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I'm looking at your challenge and opportunity, and the second highest one that you both power and data centers are concerned with is cyber and or physical security concerns. So what are, I guess both of you have this concern about cyber as well as physical, which I might understand, but tell me what are those concerns? What are we doing? How is that impeding us?
It's a great question. I've not been asked that question yet. This is a study by Deloitte, so they looked at a variety of different factors. I really just focused on the things that are sort of controlling the economic development conversations these days. So my team doesn't necessarily get into the cyber and physical security aspect of it.
Sorry.
I'd hate to opine and tell you something wrong, to be honest with you.
Well, maybe another committee we can ask that question.
There we go.
I was about to say, Senator, we'd be happy to come back to your IT committee or one of those and give you an update on our cybersecurity efforts if you'd like for us to do that sometime.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. I don't want that to be part of my job, by the way, so I don't know if any of my bosses are watching.
Senator West.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This stuff is really complicated, right? And we've obviously entered a brave new world, right? With AI and nuclear and all the nuclear energy demands that come along with AI, that talk out there, how much energy we need to compete with the Chinese for defense purposes and all that kind of stuff. So my questions, I'm trying to simplify your presentation and give us some key things, some key takeaways, I guess. So can you tell us how much power LG&E produces now, how much you produce now, how much is being used now by the consumer, and then the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years from your presentation, how much new power we need going forward? Do you
Sure.
have those answers?
I will do my best. So definitely can answer the first one. Current generating capacity for our companies is 7.5 gigawatts. The complicating factor is we are required to keep a certain amount of spinning reserve that you can't, right? In the event of extreme weather events and things like that, we have to have enough power to serve our customers in extreme needs. So I'll just say, taking that 7.5 gigawatts, subtracting out that requirement that we have,
Do you know what percentage that is?
we could probably get back to you on that. I don't
Okay,
know that
that's
off the
fine.
top of my head. But taking that off the top, our customers, and this is what we do on a very regular basis. So every 3 years, we put together an integrated resource plan where we're forecasting the needs of our customers and so forth. So by and large, our system is used very effectively. I would say that our customer base is using 80% of everything that we have after you subtract out that sort of that spinning reserve is what we call it.
Okay.
Going forward, we will be either keeping online or building 1,750 megawatts of new generation to support economic development growth in the future based on the projections of load growth that we have in the pipeline. If we need more than that, if we have more interest than what I'm showing on the screen there, we would go back to the Public Service Commission, ask them for authority to construct more power generation.
So what was the total of the new growth? I understand you're not going to get all that, right? But you do have what's the total number of new?
The projected load growth that we have is 1,800 megawatts.
Okay. So that's 1,750 should come pretty close, especially with your 80%. You're not using your full 100% now. So LG&E KU feels that they have a pretty significant cushion as far as being able to meet new economic development demand. Is that fair to say?
Well, what I would say is we are planning to build to the point that our customers need it. We really don't want to live in a world where we have a bunch of cushion, if you will. We want to try to effectively and
That's
efficiently
bad for the
use.
bottom line.
Well, it's the utility system runs based on customers pay for the operation.
It's
of
bad
the
for the
system.
consumer as well.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
The better we utilize our system fully, the better it is for our customers. And so we really try to project to the finite and say, this is exactly how much we're going to need, and have that need come to fruition almost perfectly. It would be the scenario that we're trying to drive for.
Thank you.
Yep.
And for clarification, a gigawatt is 1,000 megawatts.
Correct. Yes.
So 1,700 would be 1.7 gigawatts.
That's
So,
correct.
We use those figures interchangeably quite a bit, and sometimes maybe some people out there who don't totally understand the issue might get confused. So then one other thing too, I heard you mention quite a bit of talk about natural gas. Natural gas power plants, and we only have so much natural gas pipeline infrastructure in the ground. It seems to be that people are wanting to fight that now. NIMBY, no, not in my backyard, is a big issue. Are you foreseeing more pipelines that may have to be added in order to have the ability to get that to the place where you want to generate the electricity?
No, for the units that we propose in our CPCN, those would be near natural gas pipelines where we can get firm gas service already. So no additional pipelines would have to be built in order to serve those units. Okay. And we would plan to build units. If there were other units that we would plan for in the future, we would likely try to build those where we were close to an interstate pipeline. Okay.
And when you say firm gas commitment or whatever, that's for your company. But, if you buy up all the, guaranteed availability, is there still enough out there for other customers, including residential and businesses, to be able to purchase that same firm capacity?
I'm not the expert on that.
Okay.
To be honest with you, Mr. Chairman, so that'd probably be a question that we can follow up on for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Representative Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, John, for your presentation.
Thank you.
I want to go back to your jobs, 6 jobs created for each data center job, essentially in the community. So on average, how many jobs does the data center itself have with it? Because 6 jobs, if there's only 1 employee, means 6 jobs. But so,
Sure.
How many actually at a data center?
It's a great question. Yeah, thank you for that. It will vary. The size of the data center, obviously the larger it is, the more employees it will require. I should have noted that in conversations that we're having directly with some of these data center operators, some of the the best companies in the world, we have been given estimates on the construction side of things. First of all, let me touch on that. These projects will be built in phases over a period of time. And what I've been told on multiple different occasions in conversations with those operators is that it's usually for a hyperscale project, 1,500 to 2,000 construction jobs that will be there for a period of 8 to 10 years. So that many employees. Construction workers are typically a temporary job, but when you think about it over an 8 or 10 year period, sometimes they're thinking about that more as a full-time job. So I just want to point that out first. The other thing that I would say is what we're learning from those operators is that some of these mega facilities will employ as much as 500 to 600 full-time employees at the facilities. Now, again, that can vary. If it's a smaller facility, you wouldn't have as much. But they also, I think another important thing is these are very high-paying jobs based on what we're being told. So if it's 200 jobs, they're making about $100,000 a year for those 200 employees.
Okay. One more question. First of all, thank you. I'm glad to hear that you are working on maintaining and keeping your coal-fired plants going as long as possible. But we're looking for wattage. Obviously, from your numbers, the gas generators are going to produce more wattage than the solar is, and we know that coal is going to produce more wattage than the gas is. And I understand that the state and even national feelings on that. But I mean, even Bill Gates himself has had an awakening to the knowledge of the need for fossil fuels. And since these data centers are becoming so popular, I think we're in a primed opportunity nationally to begin looking back at going back to building coal-fired generating plants to help produce the wattage that these data centers are going to need. And we've kind of gotten away because of data centers from the conversation of how much more we're going to need for electric vehicle charges and all that stuff and the infrastructure that's in place. And we know here in Kentucky from a couple of years ago from the brownout that these other systems, when we have severe weather, just don't provide. So is that even a possibility that LG&E may be considering or at least looking into what that might cost and the advantage or disadvantage of if the opportunity arose? Coming from a coal region, I'd love to see my coal miners going back to work, and they have to have coal-fired plants to do that.
Well, thankfully, that is not in my job description. I kind of make those decisions. I would say, though, that based on this current or this CPCN order that we got a little bit ago, we will be making massive investments to keep that Mill Creek 2 unit running for 5 years longer than it would have otherwise, and investing in environmental controls at Gent, which is one of our largest capacity coal units in the state. So, again, I don't make the decisions about how to, what resource mix we have. But coal will continue to be a significant portion of our overall generation pipeline.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And just a couple of years ago, in dealing with the brownouts, one of your, I don't want to call them competitors, but another company that generates electricity, when I asked the question for me, by me, plainly stated that coal was more efficient and it was cheaper to burn coal than it was the renewables. So if we're providing the most cheapest, most reliable energy for our customers, then coal seems to be that item that we need or that product that we need to serve. So I've got to promote my coal region, John. So, but
Understood.
Thank you all for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Chester Burton.
Thank you.
And we did note your attendance.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And also thank you, Mr. Bevington, for your presentation.
Thank you.
I recognize that the Oldham County area was scrapped for the project, but I want to know, how are you addressing the community concerns regarding the Mill Creek plant? Because I'm getting a lot of calls regarding that. So are you, as far as relating to the fuel and the pollution, and how are you going to address that with the community?
Just for clarification, are you talking about the Mill Creek 2
Yes.
generating unit?
Yes.
Yeah. I can only speak in terms of generalities because, again, I'm the economic development guy, so I want to be careful that I don't overstep.
Okay.
And
Well, and Representative, I'd be happy to follow up with you on that too, and just talk to you about what we're doing through the community on that, because I know that that's not in John's job description. I'm not sure we're gonna be able to answer that question for you today, but I'm happy to follow up with you on that.
Please, I would love the conversation. Thank you.
Senator Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this goes along a little bit. I apologize for coming a little bit late, but it goes along a little bit with what John was asking. I mean, do you have some concerns about the long-term rate impacts for residential consumers by reliance on gas? Because obviously with the natural gas exports, the LNG, the increased reliance on it, in my particular area, it's not in your service area, but, power bills have become frankly, an impediment to economic development to some degree. And I guess, how are you factoring in the long-term price of gas? Because, I mean, can be a much more volatile market than some other mineral markets, or can it not?
again, it's a little bit out of my wheelhouse. I don't know if there are other people here with other companies that could speak to that specifically, but I will say, for certain, we have really, really good planners who are thinking about this for the long term, and one of our obligations is to provide safe, reliable energy at cost-effective rates for our customers. We and with our interest in economic development, we share the same concern with regard to cost. And so again, I know for certain we have really, really talented people that are looking at that for the long term and trying to plan to make sure that we're doing what's cost-effective.
And second, to go along with John, when you're looking at new generation, have you possibly looked at hybrid generation? Because I know that there is possibilities of plants that can actually run off coal or gas. So, I mean, I guess in a simplistic form, the way I think about it sometimes, I guess when you got a Republican in office, you might be able to run on coal. When you get the Democrats back in, you could switch on the gas. I don't know, but that might give you a mix of energy that would allow you to perhaps at least give your folks cheaper energy when we have somebody like President Trump in the White House.
Okay, we have.
Hybrid energy, hybrid plants.
Well, I can for certain tell you that our resource planners, and as I said a second ago, every 3 years we're doing an integrated resource plan, and we're looking at cost effectiveness and what is going to be required from our system, and they're looking at every possible piece of generation and its efficiency and cost for our long-term planning processes for sure.
Did that answer your question, Senator? Yes. Okay. We only have 3 more people we're going to hear from on this section. Representative Watkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be really brief. Thank you for the presentation. As a freshman that oftentimes hears the conversation between, solar and natural gas and coal and whatnot, I'm curious about the cost of generation because I hear various results on which one is more effective, which one is cheaper or whatnot. Can you talk about the cost per megawatt of generation for solar in comparison to like combined cycle gas?
I can't give you any specifics on that because, again, I feel like I'm like a broken record. As an economic development person, I just don't get into that specifically, but I can say that when we're factoring cost of generation, again, which is all going to be part of customer bills, we also have to factor the capacity of the units that are producing the energy. So part of the cost relates to also the dispatchability of that resource and what's base load versus what's adding generation to the mix when the sun's shining, as an example. Mm-hmm. So again, while I can't speak to the specifics of the cost per unit, it may be on par in some cases. If we're building that Mercer County facility, for example, it may be on par with some of our other generation. But again, we've got to consider what's also dispatchable and what's reliable to the system.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Representative White, and then Senator West, lastly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here. Now, are you all part of the data center that's proposed in Mason County, Kentucky? Is that a different?
I have not been involved in that project, no, sir.
Okay. I knew you didn't mention it, and I know there was planning going on, and I just wondered the status of it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Senator West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to ask multiple questions. Representative Blanton kind of got my mind going a little bit, and once again, I'll be consistent. This is probably something you can't answer. It's probably not.
I'm so sorry. I'll try. We'll see.
Yeah, but maybe you can. This is like a 5 to 10 year look into the future type question, and you have discussions internally with people within the company. Have any of your people been looking at SMRs or the new technology as it pertains to small modular nuclear reactors? Is that on the horizon? Is that something LG&E is looking at?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think, and Caroline might be able to speak to this a little bit, but I know that there's a nuclear commission that we sit on. We've got somebody that sits on that, and that's certainly going to be something that we continue to evaluate as we go forward.
Are there any specifics? Like, is there anything you can tell me that what I'm specifically talking about is this newer technology where they can manufacture these modular reactors almost like an assembly line, and they're the kind of size of a tractor trailer where you could put one out there so many megawatts, and then you can scale, just have like almost like a SMR farm. Is that been talked about? Is that something that could be a reality?
We are absolutely looking at nuclear as a company and at the different technologies. I think it might be good. I'd be happy to bring our experts, our internal experts, to come and sit down and talk to you about that if you'd like.
Thank you.
Okay. John, Caroline, please go ahead and wrap up for us.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us today, and we'll be happy to follow up. I've written down the questions we couldn't answer, and we'll get back to you with those.
Okay, thank you. And we appreciate your presentation today. One of the things that I mentioned when I had the opportunity to serve on a panel with John last week, we're starting to see some things I hadn't seen before. And one of the problems that I had for a long time is that you'd have a corporation, a large corporation, that would come in with the promise of lots of jobs and a huge investment into our state. And we obviously want that. We want people to invest and create jobs and do those sort of things. But one of the things they would kind of hold over our heads was they would say, well, we want to be able to, our customers demand that we be able to provide 30% or a certain percentage of our power from renewable sources. And, I'm okay with that. You can provide whatever you want as long as you pay for it. But what I saw as a problem was they would kind of strong arm us, and they would expect our regular ratepayers, our residential customers, to pay for that. And I had a real problem with that. But now what we're starting to see is that when some of these really large data centers start approaching us, they realize that it's going to take such an investment to be able to provide and be able to generate and dispatch that electricity when and where it's needed, that they are, in many cases, they're willing to sign a long-term contract. In some cases, they're willing to even talk about bringing some of their own generation to go with that. And those are things we haven't seen before, and I welcome those, and I think they're going to be necessary simply because what we're going to have to build is so large, such a large investment, that we can't have people out there covering that stranded costs that are left here. But I think that's an encouraging sign that we're at least even now starting to see that. So thank you so much for being with us today. Okay, next we have some people from the Kentucky Electric Cooperatives. So I think you have about a couple of different presentations. We would ask you to, every member, to introduce themselves, and the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Chase Krigler, Vice President, Government Affairs for Kentucky Electric Cooperatives.
Good afternoon. I'm David Sanford, the General Counsel for East Kentucky Power Cooperative, Inc. in Winchester, Kentucky.
Hello, and thank you. Don Gully, President and CEO, Big Rivers Electric.
Well, thank you all very much for the opportunity to be with you again today. We just wanted to provide an overview of the electric cooperative network and system here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I'll attempt to be brief, covering the majority of our distribution electric cooperatives in the state, and then allow my colleagues here to talk about the generation and transmission side. Just want to mention briefly, I'm fortunate to have a number of colleagues from our team today behind me. Eric Landis is the new Director of Government Affairs for East Kentucky Power, and then Josh Tubbs and Janice Sublett representing the Tennessee Valley Authority. Last year when I spoke to you, we highlighted some mutual aid efforts from Hurricane Helene, and this year we have another pretty tragic event for us. A tornado devastated the headquarters of South Kentucky REC in Somerset on May 16th of this year. As you can see from these photos, it was truly a devastating event. But I want to note, for those of you who have been down there, heard about that, Kevin Newton and his team down at South Kentucky were resilient in getting power back on as quickly as possible. There was actually a dispatcher in the building when the tornado came through, and because of the quality of that building, his life was saved. But our team down there was instrumental in making sure that we were providing powers to our members as quickly and as safely as possible. A look at electric cooperatives nationally. Our cooperatives across the nation are vast. We are in 48 states, 900 plus electric cooperatives, 42 million member owners. And you can see that electric cooperatives cover 56% of the American landscape and 22 million homes and businesses, and again, in 48 states. So our network is vast, and in Kentucky, we'll get to the specifics of that in a moment. 24 consumer-owned distribution cooperatives in the state. We're in 117 of our 120 counties, so there is very little geography in the Commonwealth that electric cooperatives do not represent. Approaching 1 million homes and businesses, roughly 1.8 million member owners, 100,000 miles of line, and in Kentucky, we average 9.9 consumer members a mile, which you'll see compared to some of our colleagues is significantly lower members per mile and customers per mile. Looking at our distribution cooperatives, I think I joked with you all previously, this is our NASCAR map. So if you see your local distribution cooperative on there, it does begin to look like a NASCAR. But again, to state the geography, we are everywhere in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, again, in 117 of 120 counties. Excuse me. Highlighting our generation and transmission cooperatives in the Tennessee Valley Authority, you can see here East Kentucky Power represented by the light blue, Big Rivers Electric Corporation in the pink, and then the Tennessee Valley Authority covering the territory of 5 distribution cooperatives along the Tennessee border. Some important things to note regarding electric cooperatives is that we are led by and built by folks in local communities, and that our boards who run the electric cooperatives are elected from the members who they serve. Much the same way that each and every one of you are elected, they serve at the pleasure of the members, and so we are truly community-based organizations, and we are very, very proud of that. In Kentucky, electric cooperatives employ 3,100 plus employees. We still have 72 service centers and offices across the Commonwealth. And as the slide notes, we pay a number of taxes along with local franchise fees and then assessments to the Public Service Commission annually. Electric cooperatives, by their very nature, are not-for-profit electric utilities, so we do not have a motive to maximize our profits. Our singular goal is to provide safe, affordable, and reliable electric service to our members. We provide that service at cost. But like any business, we do have to make ends meet. We do have bills to pay. But at the end of the day, there is no motivation to maximize profits. And again, our members, we hear this consistently, demand safe, reliable, and affordable energy. And that is the objective that we seek to achieve every day when we go to work. These numbers are national numbers, and this kind of highlights the 9.9. We are a touch higher in members per mile nationally, but nationally, electric cooperatives serve only 7.4 members a mile and generate $16,000 of revenue. When you compare those numbers nationally to investor-owned utilities and municipal utilities, the number of customers per mile is significantly higher, as is the generated revenue per mile. But yet we are mandated to provide the same high quality of service, which we do, and oftentimes we're very exceedingly proud of that. We have the same fixed costs, so we cover those same fixed costs and provide the same high level of service on significantly fewer members a mile and significantly less revenue a mile. Additionally, we serve some of the most disenfranchised economic areas in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. On average, our members have a household income 7.4% below the Kentucky average and over 22% lower than the national average. So we recognize that as members of our community that we work and live in, that the folks that we serve, because we are living in those communities as well. So many of you on this committee, in which we're very thankful for, are members of the Rural Electric Cooperative Caucus. We very much appreciate that opportunity. Coming up this past year, we had our Welcome Back Luncheon, our Electric University event, which was hosted at John Sherman Cooper Station in Somerset by East Kentucky Power. We had many of you at our Kentucky Electric Cooperatives annual meeting, our Lineman's Rodeo breakfast. And then we've been sending out monthly issue briefs to caucus members, keeping you all informed of issues that are happening across the nation in relation to our grid, transmission, and some issues that are affecting our members. And then we also have our Frankfort Youth Tour, which I know many of you come and attend to see your local students coming from around the state. These are just a few quick photos for some of our events. The photo on your bottom right was of those attendees at John Sherman Cooper Station earlier this year. You can see Representative Baker speaking to a group from his area, and then Representative Pollock was able to get up in a bucket truck this year and sail high above the Capitol, which I think he enjoyed quite a bit. And additionally, as a reminder to you all, Kentucky Electric Cooperatives produces Kentucky Living Magazine. We are the largest monthly publication in the state. Over 500,000 copies go to our member owners every month. And for those of you that are caucus members, you are a member of the largest caucus in the state. And every February, we send out our legislative guide along with a page exactly like this, listing every member and listing our co-chairs as well. And that goes out, again, to 500,000 folks because we want to make sure that our folks are as informed as they can be on the issues that are going on in Frankfort and provide them an opportunity to contact you with any questions or concerns that they have as well. With that, I will hand it over to David Samford with East Kentucky Power for their presentation.
Thank you, Chase. If you want to advance to the next slide there, just to tell you a little bit about East Kentucky, the most important thing is that we're owned by our 16 owner-member distribution cooperatives. You can see the map there. We have about $4 billion in assets in generation transmission. We serve through our distribution co-ops about 1.1 million customers in 89 Kentucky counties. You can go on. You can see there that we have 4 different power stations around the state. Maysville, Oldham County, Clark County, and then down in Pulaski, we have 5 different landfill gas-to-energy plants that are located around the state. And then currently we have 1 cooperative solar farm, but we've got a couple more that are on the way that were approved by the Public Service Commission earlier this year. So when we think about really what our goal is and how we want to move forward, the energy industry right now is in the middle of, or really the beginning of, what promises to be the most volatile, it's complex, it's ambiguous, and so we want to move forward very boldly. And so that's what our board of directors has charged us to do with our strategic plan. And so the goal of our capital plan is to be able to meet growing demand, which is quite large. To be able to hedge our costs and risks to make sure that our costs our rates are as affordable as possible, to maintain reliability. When people go to flip the light, they expect the power to be there, and that's our expectation as well. And then also to make sure that we maintain compliance with all of the increasingly complex federal rules that are out there and be able to fulfill all of our regulatory obligations. One of the things that I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an update on, we were able to just announce some of this this past year, but we're embarking on investing $2 billion in Kentucky in new generation assets over the next 5 years to really be able to make sure that we're able to meet our growing demand. The largest of those is a new unit that will be a combined cycle natural gas unit at our Cooper station just outside of Burnside, Kentucky. 745 megawatts. The Cooper station right now is the oldest generation station in our fleet. It's coal-fired. It will stay coal-fired, but we'll be adding the gas, the combined cycle to that. It should be online by December of 2030, and so we're really excited to be able. This unit will give us a lot more operational flexibility, so we're super excited about that one. We're also co-firing, to Senator Wheeler, this goes back to your point about hybrid plants. We're co-firing all 4 of our coal-fired units at the Spurlock station in Mason County, and then 1 of our units at the Cooper station in Pulaski to be able to burn coal and natural gas. Again, that's good for consumers because it should help to be able to lower or keep the cost increase a little bit lower than what they would otherwise be if you're relying on just one fuel. Because you're able to kind of hedge between the two, but it also gives us a lot of flexibility and ability to move forward in an uncertain federal regulatory environment over the next 10 to 20 years. And so those units will be completely co-fired. They'll be able to be gas-fired. They'll be able to actually run gas and coal at the same time. And so we're very excited about the operational flexibility there. That requires constructing some pipelines that our partners are working on, and what those pipelines will do is be able to open up additional economic development opportunities for the communities we serve by bringing natural gas to those communities in a way that they've not had it previously. So in addition to being able to meet our fuel and capacity resource needs, it's also going to spur some economic development in those communities. And then the third major investment is a new power plant outside of Liberty in Casey County. So it'll be our Liberty generating station. The technology here is reciprocating engines. And so again, they'll be natural gas fired. but they have the ability to come online and offline in just a matter of minutes, which you don't have that flexibility with CTs. And so that's going to allow us to be very nimble and agile in being able to chase peaks and making sure that we have the ability to serve all of our load in the most economically efficient way as possible. So the Liberty Station should be online by December 2028. So we're very excited about that as well. Economic development is a big thing. If Rodney Hitch was here, he would be able to go through dozens and dozens of statistics being awarded Site Selection Magazine's top awards. Just a lot of good news there. What we're trying to do, of course, is think about it from the standpoint of reliability, which is what economic development prospects are really looking for, and then also cost competitiveness. And so Kentucky scores very well in both of those regards. We're very popular among manufacturing interests, but you're also starting to see data centers and others that are having an interest in Kentucky coming in here. And so we're always constantly looking for opportunities to increase our jobs, to increase our investment, and to increase our tax base. And so economic development is a key part of our strategy as we move forward. I want to talk a little bit about data centers. So there's a lot. I can't remember. I think it may have been you, Senator West, that described it as complex, and that's a good word for it. It is complex. But we proposed the first specific tariff for data center tariffs back in April. And I want to thank the commission, congratulate the commission. They ruled on our tariff last week. They actually got the order out early. So anytime your regulator does that, you're always very appreciative of it. And they took us through the process of, really understanding the tariff and what it does. If you go to the next slide, you can kind of see some of the key tenets. But what we really wanted to do with our data center tariff is make sure that we understand what are the costs that a data center is going to impose or cause to create for us. What are the risks that may not have a financial, something that's easy to quantitate financially, but will have, a significant impact upon our operations. Let's identify those and be able to make sure that they're appropriately allocated so that if you're bringing a cost to East Kentucky Power's owner members, you need to be the one who pays that cost. If you're creating a risk, you need to be the one who bears that risk. And so that was really the guiding light, the polar North Star, if you will, of the data center tariff. And so the goal for that is to create a new customer class that really only applies to data centers, which are defined in the tariff, so that we eliminate the cross-subsidization from one customer class to another. Residential customers should not be subsidizing data centers. Data centers shouldn't be subsidizing residential customers. And so that's really the purpose of our tariff. The other thing that it does is it says if we're going to be constructing infrastructure up front, if there's transmission upgrades that are necessary, we need you to go ahead and make the investment to pay for that up front. And so that's an important protection for consumers so that they're not left holding the bag in case a data center has interest but then falls away and doesn't develop the project for some reason. The other thing that's really important about it is we introduced the idea of dedicated resources. So if you're a data center over 250 megawatts, which in the old days was a large data center, now it's not so much of a large data center. But if you're over 250 megawatts in load, what you need to do is you need to have a dedicated resource to serve you. So all of the investments, the $2 billion in new generation that I just talked about, that's to serve our native existing growing load growth. That doesn't count any data centers that may or may not be coming to our territory. And so under our data center tariff, if you're going to locate within our owner members' territory, there needs to be some sort of a resource that we know is going to be tagged to your load to make sure that the costs are properly identified and allocated along with the risks, and to know that we have the ability to reliably serve you. The last thing there is just making sure that our existing owner members are fully protected and covered by adequate collateral and security requirements, just to make sure that their financial investments in East Kentucky Power and their owner members up until now are protected. So again, want to thank the commission for getting that order out early. Just a couple of things left on federal energy policy. That's really where a lot of our costs arise. East Kentucky has never rolled in the environmental cost into a base rate. So every month, our customers at the end of the line will see a line item that says environmental surcharge. That is the cost of federal regulation. So all of the environmental regulations that come from Washington are called from that. Coal, I think there were some questions about coal earlier. It's very much something that we're attuned to. Tony Campbell, who's our CEO there, was invited in April to the White House to appear with President Trump to talk about how there is a need for coal-fired generation in the United States, and that's an important part of maintaining reliability. In June, Tony was also invited to come up to the House Natural Resources Committee in Washington and to offer testimony there on grid reliability and resiliency. So we're not the largest co-op in the world by any means, but we try to do our best when it comes to advocacy. And Tony, our CEO, has definitely done a great job by leaving a mark in Washington. So the goal there is that the administration would continue to really unleash America's energy resources and let us generate the power we need to grow our economy. The last slide is just the investments that we have in some of our communities. Since we're owned by our owner members, we're really owned by the communities we serve, which it creates a very nice alignment. There's just some of the activities and opportunities we have, but just to highlight that, the honor flights are always a treat, where we take veterans up to D.C. for the day and be able to give them a tour and to see some of the war memorials and monuments. And then they come home and have a hero's welcome when they get back to the airport in the evening. Also, the Special Olympics is an organization that we've partnered with for quite a while, and then also the Ronald McDonald House. So there's more than that, but those are three that we wanted to highlight. So be happy to take questions later, but thank you for the opportunity to present.
Ready to roll? Thank you. Again, Don Gully, President, CEO, Big Rivers Electric Corporation. I've been in the job almost 2 years, but as you can tell from my gray in my beard or the lack of hair on top, it was not my first rodeo. I was President and CEO of Southern Illinois Power Cooperative. And when I say Illinois, please do not throw stones at me. Operated coal plants in Illinois. And let me thank, I really want to thank this state. I want to thank the work that all of you are doing to protect the interests of reliable, dispatchable power, coal energy. My dad was a coal miner. My grandfather was a coal miner. And certainly Big Rivers has coal, and it's a big part of our future. If we can go on to the next slide. And you look at Big Rivers in terms of size, we have scale, but we only have 3 member owners, Jackson Purchase, Kennergy, and Meade County. I did learn the difference between West Kentucky and Western Kentucky real early on. But we have 3 member owners, and we serve large industrial loads, and we certainly know the risk that goes with large industrial loads and what it can mean to lose those loads. We've experienced that, and so as you think about the data center implications and how you need to protect the member owners, and that's what we're all about, protecting the member owners and ultimately protecting those 250,000 people that we reach. If you can, next slide. We have a new strategic plan in place and priorities. Again, they're all about protecting the members. Next slide. We do have an all-of-the-above approach, but I'd like to highlight a couple of things on this slide. As you see, we do have hydro coming out of the Southeast Power Administration, 178 megawatts. Recent solar PPA came online that was 160 megawatts. And then we have the Wilson Station is providing our coal resource, and then we have the Green Station, 2 units that were converted from coal in 2022 to natural gas. But one thing that is important, if you look at that bottom statement there, even though you see gas is the predominant in terms of size and megawatts, coal provided 90% of our energy needs for our member owners, which clearly reflects the importance of coal to our baseload generation. And one other item to highlight, we did have a failure of a natural gas unit, the Reed CT, a very small unit, 65 megawatts, catastrophic failure. It was one of 6 units that were put into place. It was one of 1 unit that was actually continuing to operate. For the most part, it should have been in a museum. It was old, antiquated. Hats off to our staff and the work that they did to keep it alive and running as long as they did. We're looking now at options to replace and how we might be able to replace that capacity and the energy that we need for the ongoing growth of our member owners. Next slide. Well, I'm last on the agenda here, and I know my time is short, so they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. I have a lot of pictures, and I'd like to walk through these pictures and what we're facing, particularly in an RTO in the MISO market. And what you see there on the left is the NERC. They manage and operate the reliability of the North American grid, North American Electric Reliability Corporation, and this is their risk assessment, their long-term risk assessment. And you can see the bright flashing red where they're saying there is potential problems coming on the horizon in order to have enough energy to keep the lights on. On the right-hand side is really, this is why we have a problem. If you look at what the planned resources are that is coming online, you see the dominant resource is solar and battery. And as you well know, solar operates when the sun shines, and battery technology will get you about 4 hours worth of duration. And then the balance is natural gas, wind, and a little bit of hybrid. The bottom line is the assessment as to when MISO was projecting their issues and when it would arise, and they're looking at 2034 as being the time when they actually have anticipated negative reserve margins. That has since been updated, and I'm going to take you to the next slide. And this one scares me a little bit. If you look on the left-hand side there, it shows that in 2028 and 2029, negative 8.2, that is when they say we are now going to have reserve margin issues in MISO. That is if our current build and current addition to the network maintains the same pace. If everything comes online in time, you go to the right bar graph. No, back up. Right bar graph. Back up. There, one more. The right bar graph. They say if everything comes online on time, as planned, we have sufficient reserve margin. When has anything come on time and everything come on as planned? And if you look at the queue, this is what is currently in the queue, and the concern there is natural gas is the blue, 14 gigawatts of capacity, and the balance is not dispatchable energy. Okay, next slide. And these are the load growth projections. There were some questions earlier about data centers and how much of the data centers is coming. And this is from MISO. And you see there the projection of overall load growth by the time we get to 2044 and the incredible growth. This is growth that we have not seen since 98, 99 timeframe. And I was around for that as well. And the data centers, you can see they make up about a third, EVs a little bit smaller than that. And then, of course, you have onshoring with industrial development of manufacturing, and then, of course, building electrification continues to maintain the balance of that. Next slide. So, data center load, it's complex. It's not as easy as it looks, and today the market is the answer. But the market's not a real answer for us, because if everybody leans on the market, you go back 2 slides ago and what happens? You're short. We're all short. So midterm, maybe you can secure some PPAs and work with marketers out there, but ultimately you have to put steel in the ground in order to supply them. And then depending on size, may have to find yourself partnering on generation projects. I think that question was asked also as well. So next slide. So here's our guiding principles, is we need upfront dollars for annual capacity, because we don't know if those data centers are going to be here today or tomorrow or the next day. We need credit support by all of those, make sure that margins are aligned with our typical rate structures. And we want to make sure that we don't get used to new margins, because they can quickly go away. Big River's experienced that with the loss of a large smelter load. Also, upfront dollars for studies and infrastructure upgrades that need to be done in order to do that. And then also, if you have curtailment events coming through MISO and their requirements, look at opportunities and working with those data centers to look at curtailment before native load. And then really, we need to make sure that we are protecting the members and understanding the balance of those benefits that they bring, but also the risks that they bring. Next slide. So that's the load side of the equation. Let's talk about the generation side of it, and I can talk from experience with Big Rivers. The first question is, can you even get through the MISO generation queue? Big Rivers, when I landed 2 years ago, Big Rivers had a combined cycle plant in the MISO queue. It was in and put in 2022 to build a new one-on-one combined cycle plant. We did not get the results from MISO until May of this year. And what they told us was, yes, you can interconnect a new combined cycle plant, but it will cost you an additional $400 million of interconnection upgrades because of work that's happening in generation and solar developments that's happening in Arkansas, even though this unit would have been located hundreds of yards from the 345 kV substation. So the second part of that is you look at the cost of that combined cycle. In 2022, those costs were in the $800 to $900 million range total for a 700 megawatt combined cycle. Today, $1.5 billion. And so you've seen an escalation and a ramp up of these costs. So there are supply chain limits. We've been talking to the OEMs, to Mitsubishi, to GE, to all of them. Right now, there's global competition for these machines, and I was told by one of the OEMs that all of their production was bought out by Saudi Arabia for an entire year in cash. We have to recognize that this is a global market, and just can you get the EPC firms to come in and do the work? Are you going to get the A teams and the B teams? Well, they're already working. They're already putting units on. If we come in new, then we're going to get the C and the D team. Congratulations to East Kentucky for starting the process early, and they're in a good spot in doing that. Our load and our spot is a little different than East Kentucky, and we're able to sufficiently supply the members that we have and support their needs, but it's the growth and the addition of the data centers that put and add risk to our portfolio. Of course, we need dispatchable energy, but it's just now harder to get. It's harder to get natural gas. Next slide. So what do? Number one, keep your coal plant. That's the advantage of having a reliable, dispatchable resources. You have 90 days of fuel on the ground. I had been on the job 4 days, and Winter Storm Heather rolled through Kentucky. And I was getting ready to line up and purchase natural gas for our green units. On Thursday, they told me natural gas was $4 an MMBTU. I said, okay, we know it's going to go up because the storm's going to hit Sunday. We need to buy gas Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It's a strip. We call Friday. Well, natural gas is now $12. Okay, we're getting ready to transact on this. We have to call the next day because that's how you transact on strips for the weekend. And they said it was $23 an MMBTU. $23, from 4 to 23. And they said, oh, by the way, you cannot get it now. So green sat idle for that weekend. We went to the market, and that was worn by our members. It's not as reliable as we think. So challenges remain with coal. There is a myriad of environmental rules. We're in as good a place as we've been in my 38-year career with the current administration, so it's time to act, it's time to move. The administration recognizes the need for relief. I was in D.C. yesterday. I was meeting with the National Energy Dominance Council, with the EPA, and with the DOE to help and move our coal industry forward. It's all of the above. Nuclear remains. I'm on the Nuclear Energy Development Authority here in Kentucky, but we are still decades away from nuclear, and it's going to take a consortium of all of us at the table. Kentucky has its challenges because we have East Kentucky in PJM, we have LG&E and is an island, we have the TVA co-ops, and then you have Big Rivers, which is located in MISO. So there are interconnection issues, and you don't want to be number one. You want to be number 4 or 5 before you begin to put a shovel in the ground. Certainly, we need to support gas development, and infrastructure improvements are needed and supply chain improvements are needed, and we need to find a way to get more gas in the ground. I heard that question as well. One of the options, and one of the things we're looking at in talking to a number of different developers, is looking at partnership arrangements to jointly develop these projects. Companies that already have queue positions for generation, particularly when you think about the AI data center growth and how you might be able to isolate that, get the supplies that you need, but put the risk where it needs to be on those data centers. And then, of course, anything we do on the coal side, we need to future-proof capital spending from changing administrations. Our board has the hardest job in the world. They're making 30-year decisions, and the administration changes every 4 years, and not a lot of certainty around that. Again, thank you for what you're doing here in Kentucky. It is truly a breath of fresh air having come from across the river. Next slide. I don't want to get away without talking about transmission and what our transmission group is doing. And we have incredible reliability to our member owners on the transmission score, 99.99%. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a pretty darn good score when it comes to reliability of the transmission system. And our staff and line crews are doing a great job. But it doesn't stop here for transmission. Next slide. There is a lot of transmission development that is happening. I testified before FERC. It's in my prior job, and my words to FERC was, if you can't beat them, join them. And that being, transmission will get built. The RTOs have a long-range transmission plan. They are having a build-out. It will cost our members. It will be paid for by our members. So why not Big Rivers be part of that investment, particularly for those lines that are cutting across our service area and our member owner service area to bring reliability to them, but actually bring cash flow positive results back to the member owners. And this is a project that we're looking at. There's a total spend estimated at $750 million. Now, we would not make a full $750 million investment, but this is a project that will not be competitively bid in the competitive bid process at MISO. It is Big Rivers and Big Rivers to partner in order to get the project across. And so I'm saying, tell us why we shouldn't invest. Next slide. And really, just to summarize, this is about maintaining reliability and affordability with the increasing pressures we have to meet the load growth. It is an all-of-the-above approach, de-risking capital investment, as I mentioned to you, future-proofing regulation, and invest in transmission to hedge that rising cost. Encourage and support development in Western Kentucky by offering competitive energy rates. My position is I'd rather have singles and doubles than home runs. Singles and doubles that bring jobs to the community. That's what counts. Funding opportunities, and as I mentioned, I was in D.C. and I've been meeting with the Department of Energy. There are programs out there today that are helping support coal and coal projects, both expansion and modernization, and we need to bring those home to Kentucky. And at last, but not least, certainly is stay nimble. And what I love about the cooperative industry is it is cooperation among cooperatives. All three of us here sitting at the table, we have a strong statewide association. We have good friends in the East, and continuing to work with those public and private partners to balance the impacts that we're seeing of these constantly changing regulatory climate that we find ourselves in. But at the end of the day, it's all about keeping the lights on and doing it safely and making sure we keep rates as low as we possibly can. I think that's it. Wow,
Okay,
that's a
thank you.
lot.
Thanks for your presentation. It was very, very good. I know it was long, but a lot of information out there, and there's some changes that are happening out there that I think really, if we can get them through, will make a difference. One thing I want to mention that I think has been a hindrance for years is something that a lot of people don't even understand. It's called new source review. And new source review is kind of, I think, was put in 30 years ago, or whenever it was, to prevent someone from making improvements to coal plants, because if they went over a certain amount, then they had to go back and totally, I guess, redo and look at what it would take to totally upgrade the plant to the newest standards. And so what New Source Review did is it caused us to continue to let these old, dirty coal plants emit more pollution, because the perfect became the enemy of the good. We would not allow upgrades that would have really produced a lot of carbon out there. It would have solved a lot of the problems. I do believe that there is some potential for some pretty big changes to new source review. Do you see anything like that?
It is actually underway. Met with Administrator Zeldin, and I was with Aaron Szabo yesterday, who is Deputy Administrator there for the EPA, and this question came up on new source review because, what's the best way to kill a project is just, if you wait long enough, it'll die, right?
Yeah.
And it's about timing and moving the process along in a way that makes sense. And the other thing, in talking with Mr. Szabo yesterday, is we don't want to get so far down the road and then we begin spending money and making investments, and then all of a sudden lawsuit, and then the next thing you know, that's on the backs of our member owners. We have to somehow get loan guarantee. I've asked for loan guarantees and supporting, because you've got one government agency that's wanting to hand you money, and then another government agency is trying to take it away from you, right? So
right.
That's my perspective.
Okay. Well, I know I'm on the, I just got elected treasurer of the Southern States Energy Board, which is about 15 states in the mostly southern region. And West Virginia, at our last meeting, was actually talking about that they can actually refurbish some of their existing coal plants a lot cheaper than they can put on natural gas units. And
I believe that's true.
And I'm not opposed to natural gas. I mean, I like it's a great fuel, but I think that they could not do that because of new source review.
Yeah, and that's absolutely. And Representative Gooch, you really want to do what's in the best interest of our members. We're not for profit. Everything we do is at the expense of our members. And if we can bring a better solution to the table that's even more reliable and battles the NIMBY that you mentioned earlier on natural gas, why not? Yeah. Why not?
Yeah. Well, let me say, it has been a long presentation, but we have several people that don't want you to stop yet. So with that,
dang it.
Representative McCool.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation today. Certainly, it's very informative, and I appreciate what you've done. I'm a former coal miner myself, so I understand the value of those jobs, and unfortunately, we've lost a lot of those. And we've lost people in Eastern Kentucky, which hurts the infrastructure because it hurts the cost, because the infrastructure is still there, so you got to maintain that cost with fewer people, and that gets distributed out amongst the people. Coal, as you know, has been a good provider and quality for power and efficient. So maybe a simple question, but maybe not a simple answer. Is it even currently possible? Is it currently even possible to build a coal plant in the United States, and more particular in Kentucky? And if not, what would it take?
That is a great question. Great two questions. And to the chairman's point, right now it's not possible. The rules of the EPA define the emissions control limits that you would have to hit in order to be able to do that are just not technologically possible. Now, the good news is Don mentioned, is I think the EPA is aware of that, and I think under new leadership, I think that they'll fix that. So I think the first part of the answer to the question is no, it's not currently possible, but I'm optimistic that the regulatory rules will change so that it will be possible again. And then the question is, are you ready to be able to use that window of time, however long it is, to be able to maximize that opportunity and to be able to make that investment? So we're hopeful and optimistic, and it's one of the reasons that Tony went to Washington to appear with the president and coal miners in April, is to talk about the need for coal-fired generation in the United States.
I support exactly what David said, but one thing I've noticed that is different in Washington today versus 2016, 2017 is the conversation has changed. It has become more of a bipartisan approach to energy. They're recognizing the need for energy in order to support this economy. I used to say, not in my lifetime would we see another coal plant. I was part of a consortium that built the last plant that was ever constructed. That was Prairie State Generating Station in Illinois. But I think it's going to be inside of my lifetime now, maybe just outside of my career. We'll see. I've got my hopes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Miles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And on behalf of Senator Boswell and Representative Johnson and myself, we want to welcome constituents today, Don Gully and Talina Matthews from Big Rivers. We want to welcome them here, and thank you all for being here. I know you've made a quick trip to D.C. I think you waved at someone while you were there. And but I just want to ask you about, as far as the coal-fired plants that we currently have in your footprint, so to speak. I know that there will be needs for upgrades. So as far as the life expectancy with modernization or any type of upgrades to it, environmental or whatever it may be, what is our lifetime with that? Because I know these guys out of East Kentucky love coal, but I can tell you for sure the girls and guys out of West Kentucky do too. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I want to be careful how I answer this question, because I have a lot of employees out there that depend on that, and certainly a lot of coal miners out there whose jobs depend on that as well. Coal, I think, continues to need be the bridge to nuclear. We've talked about nuclear and the work that's going on in Kentucky. But even in Kentucky, if you look at the nuclear side of it, when can that come online? We're looking at 2045 and 2050, and the conversation around that is 3,000 megawatts. That's a drop in the bucket for what is needed. I have had great generator engineers that I've worked with, and I've asked them, how long can you keep a coal plant running? And they say, as long as you have money, right? So if you keep investing in them and protecting them, yes, they can run into the 2040s, 2050s. Was at the old IOU before I saw the light and came to the co-op world. When I was with the IOUs, we had a coal plant that was 70 years old and operated. So it can run for a long time.
Senator Williams.
Thank you very much. And I did want to point out, whereas us Northern Kentuckians may not be mining a lot of coal, we certainly do learn to burn it. Love to burn it, okay? Since we got the biggest plant up there, and we need to build more coal plants, and I'm hoping, and this, I'm just going to make a short statement, I'm hoping we create the regulatory environment that when that window opens to build more coal plants, that we jump on it and we're ready to go. So that's what I'm looking for, is that regulatory environment that we can take advantage of that right away. And I do want to thank East, in terms of green power, the only thing more dispatchable than coal is all their landfill investments. And I am a landfill gas user. It's very reliable, and the pile just keeps getting higher. So I think they got 75 years of fuel stored on site up there in Bavarian. And thank you very much for that investment. And you can shut down all of the solar plants, but let's just build dispatchable green power, landfill gas. Thank you.
Senator West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for all the questions today, but these issues are very, very important to my district. I represent Maysville Spurlock Power Station, and my question relates to, this is directed to Mr. Sanford. and your comments on the tariffs, the data center tariffs. I think I understand it, but just to make sure and we understand what will happen moving forward, I'm going to portray what I think is going to happen, and correct me if I'm wrong and help me through it. So we have, you've applied for the tariff, you've received the tariff. Theoretically, let's say you have a data center that wants to locate there. Okay, we've talked about this earlier. The data center says, we're going to pay for our own power. We're going to pay for the power for our new data center. All right. The way that would legally, officially work is through this tariff process, where they would pay for the new production. The production would go on the grid. The tariff would make it to where it's a separate category on the grid. And so East Kentucky Power would move power over to the data center, and then whatever additional power was produced, that would inure to the benefit of the consumer, because it would be additional power that East Kentucky Power could use. Is that a good description of what would happen?
I would say it's a fair description. I would say it's a little simplified in that we're a member of the PJM interconnection, which operates the largest capacity energy markets in North America. And so the way that it works on a daily basis is all of our generation we sell into the market, and then we purchase all of the energy we need to serve our load back out of the market. The benefit that gives us is it creates a natural hedge on the cost of electricity for our members, so that if the market price is below what our cost to generate would be, that would be the price that they would pay. But if the market price is over the cost of generation, then when you net everything out, they're only paying what our actual generation cost would be. And so that's the benefit of being in a regional market. You also don't have to have all of the reserves that you would if you're a standalone utility, because you're able to rely upon a much larger power pool. With regard to data center, and that applies to all customer classes, not just data centers. With regard to the data centers, what I would say is, we were overrun in the early part of last year with everybody wanting to build a data center. Everybody wanted to do it. And so one of the things that we said is we gotta have some sort of priority to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff. And so one of the things that we did in our tariff, which the commission blessed, is we said, okay, you're going to start with a $75,000 application fee. It goes up from there. We'd proposed a cap at $250,000, which any hyperscaler is going to hit easily. And the commission says, no, you need to make sure they even pay more than that if that's what the cost to do the studies are. So when we started charging the application fee to do the studies to figure out what are the transmission needs, what are the power supply needs, what we found is the number of interested applicants went down substantially. But if you can't afford a $250,000 application fee, but you're proposing to build a multi-billion-dollar data center, the math doesn't add up there. So by separating the wheat from the chaff, we've been able to really work with the data center applicants who are serious and have the resources to be able to do it. The process you described is pretty much, I think that's accurate. So once you file your application, we look at the transmission system. We say, here's what we think we need to be able to serve it. We take that solution to PJM, who manages the bulk power grid in this part of the world, and then they see if they agree. That process can take a year, unfortunately. Sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it does. At the same time, we're looking at, if you're over 250 megawatts, what resources do we need to be able to have to serve you? And even though we're making $2 billion of investment in our generation resources, that's to serve the load that we've got now and anticipate normal natural load growth. And Don's right. You have to be able to go to the market in the short term to be able to get the data center, or really any large customer who wants to be, in production within the next 2 or 3 years. You would have to go to the market to be able to get that initial service. Then from there, that's when Kentucky's policy on having steel in the ground, which has been a bedrock of regulatory practice for 90 years, comes into play. And really, that's one of the things that has helped keep our electric rates low. We're looking at, okay, what resources can we build, or that are out there already that we could buy to make sure that you have a dedicated resource to make sure that happens. one of the things that we've seen in PJM, and this strays just a little bit, but I think it's important you understand it. There's a lot of states that deregulated their electric markets 25 years ago. And that was good at the time because there was tons of generation, it was cheap, and capacity prices were low. But as coal units have been retired across the United States, and particularly the mid-Atlantic states is who I'm talking about, and they've put all of their eggs in the renewable energy basket, what's happened is now those prices that their consumers are starting to pay are shooting through the roof, to the point that the capacity market about 2 or 3 years ago was in the $27 range, and then it was $270 the next year. Huge increase. Now, again, we're protected because in Kentucky we have steel on the ground to be able to generate. But if you're in a state that doesn't have that and has a deficit, that's a cost you have to pay because you have to go to the market for that capacity. So Governor of Pennsylvania, Governor of Maryland, some other states, New Jersey, came in and successfully argued over our opposition and others that there should be caps on the capacity market. And so there are for the next 2 years. It's capped at about $320, which is still higher, but it should have been even more. And so what that creates is an issue where the true cost of building generation and the true value of that generation is masked, and it doesn't send the right price signal. Where Big Rivers is in PJM, I think the capacity price is over $600, right? Yeah, in MISO. So if I'm an independent power producer trying to figure out where am I going to build generation, I'm going to go to Don's territory because the price is twice as high. And so that is a problem that is going to have to get worked out through the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and we're working on that with others. But it's problematic, and it complicates the problem of being able to serve data centers. So I know that's an extremely long-winded answer, but hopefully that's helpful.
That sounds like an answer I would give to a short question. But the tariff acts to help the consumer, the residential consumer, is that correct, in this particular situation?
Yeah, one of the things that we did is we talked to some other cooperatives around the country that served data centers when they were 10, 20, 25 megawatt loads, and tried to take the lessons that if they had known at the time that they started those relationships, they would have done things differently. We tried to apply those lessons to our tariff and to make sure that we didn't repeat them. And so we're confident that we've captured a lot of consumer protections that maybe smaller data centers 20 years ago, 10 years ago didn't. So.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Okay, our final question comes from my state senator, someone who's really passed some meaningful legislation to try to guarantee affordability and reliability. Senator Mills.
Hi. Representative Gooch, thank you. Mr. Chairman. I've spent 3 hours, 4 hours now talking about power and data centers just consistently today. It's just the most dominant issue of the legislature. I think it's going to dominate this legislature coming up. But it's very difficult and very intertwined. So many issues there. But I just kind of want to ask this question and get your opinion because I consider all three of you experts in this field. I thought it was very interesting what Bill Gates did, what he said about power. Do you think that this is like the crack in the dam and that folks have gotten together and said, we've got to have fossil fuel power if we're going to compete with the Chinese in AI? And do you see that turning to where you're going to see more people making those comments? And then to where we can start using more fossil fuels, to where it'll be we'll have more of an ability to overcome the environmental concerns in the future.
I think that answer is absolutely yes, Senator Mills. I was on the phone with a developer this morning and talking specifically about that question and the shift that we're seeing. Yeah. And what they need access through transmission, and they need access to markets. And while some of them may have looked green, they need power to power their data centers. And so I think that's the path we're down. We're going down now. Some of it now call it a dirty hedge. In other words, they look the other way whenever the coal comes by wire and supports that load.
And I would just add, something you said triggers something my father, who passed away, once used to tell me. But he was a minister, and he always said that the more you stretch the truth, it's like a rubber band; it snaps back faster and harder. So.
And Senator, I'll just conclude by saying I was having the same conversation. The question was asked by a colleague the other week, and I think it's the simple realization that they've done the math, is that in order to have what it is that we need for future economic development in this Commonwealth and in this country, somebody has done the math and realized the answer to the question is yes, we have to have the additional capacity. And the reality is, until nuclear comes online, baseload generation needs to come from a fossil fuel.
And I'll just finish by following up on that, if it's okay. Point of personal privilege, I guess. But, I think the question is that, people have been saying a lot of this for a long time, but they weren't listened to, or they were dismissed. And I know that, we've been told that we're facing the imminent doom of our planet because of anthropogenic global warming in the next 7 or 10 or 12 years. And now people are starting to say, well, that's really not true. And a lot of this has been out there. I know I've ran across something in my files from Richard Lindzen. He's a professor of Earth, Atmospheric, and Planetary Science Emeritus at the Massachusetts MIT. And this was from July the 4th of 2024. And he talked about that we immediately need to do away with the 2050 carbon dioxide, where we're net zero by 2050. And what he was saying was that it really wasn't going to have any really significant difference in the temperature or what the effects to the climate. But he goes on to say that it would have very, very detrimental differences to the population. Well, at first I thought they were still trying to say that was because people were still damaged because of carbon emissions. No, that wasn't true at all. What he was saying was the efforts to net zero of carbon by 2050 would even, several billion people on the planet don't have access to any electricity. And when you deny that population electricity, you're denying them vaccines and medical care and hospitals and schools and jobs and all of those types of things, and that's very detrimental to their health. And then also the rate increases that come from trying to do that was really going to have detrimental impacts to the population as well, the worldwide population, not just in this country. But I think now, because of some of the cracks in the dam, people are going to start listening to opinions like this, where they didn't before. They just totally dismissed them. So anyway, thank you, gentlemen. It's been a very good I don't usually have meetings this long, but this has been a good one. And I think that's evident by the fact that we have a good crowd that stuck around. To the members, I will say this is our last committee meeting before our session starts. There are several administrative regulations at the end of those all did go through administrative review, and they were found, I think, not to have any real problems. And so unless somebody has any objections. Yeah.
I would just say one thing. There's a big issue facing the state of Kentucky right now in the Department of Fish and Wildlife having to do with the F1 strain bass. And I just will be on record saying I will be presenting some legislation will allow that to be introduced in the state of Kentucky. And so it may be in conflict with the regs.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this meeting is adjourned. We're glad to have the Public Service Commission here with us today, and thank y'all for being